Now, here are Morgan Streetman and Roxanne Wilder.
Hello, gentlemen. We're on the heels of a patriotic weekend, July 4th. Did you have good celebrations?
Yeah, great celebration.
I celebrated, but I don't know how much you celebrated because you brought in a ton of work today.
Well,
You were working over the weekend.
yeah, I'm always working.
Yes, you are.
I'm always working. When you're doing brain work, you can't turn the brain off that easy. So,
What's in that big brain today, Morgan? Where are we headed?
there's so many things bouncing around. There's so many things going on in our country, so many things I want to talk about, trying to compose my thoughts on them. But, really one of the key things I'm coming out of this weekend with is just I'm so sick of this cancel culture that we've developed in this country. And I'm sick of the tearing down of the statues, and I'm sick of the attempt to erase history. I'm just fed up with it. I'm absolutely fed up with it. And we heard a great speech from President Trump over the weekend at Mount Rushmore. They're talking about they want to take down Mount Rushmore. I mean, it's absolutely insane. I mean, and when I say they, I mean the people who are involved in the revolutionary movement that's going on in our country. They're trying to create a revolution. They're trying to upend the existing social, political, and civic system that we have in this country. And they don't even know what they want to replace it with except for pure anarchy. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing played out right in front of us exactly the end game of where their policies, whatever their policies are, which seems to be primarily destroy everything historical, right? Even including statues of elks in Portland. I mean, what did the Elks ever do to anybody?
I was in the kitchen talking to Lana from QYK this morning, and she was fit to be tied. She's just very small-statured, nice little young lady, just out of her mind mad because she said she's been to, to the monuments.
Right.
And, they're going after the four heads in the mountain now, and she was just, she was violently angry.
It was just a few years. Yeah. I mean, it's just a few years ago that Bernie Sanders was out there being interviewed out there at Mount Rushmore. This was in 2016, and he was interviewed by CNN, and he was talking about how proud he was to be an American seeing a place like Mount Rushmore. I mean, up until just, 6-8 months ago, Bernie Sanders was like the king communist. He was like their main leader for their communist movement, for their resist movement, for their revolution, whatever you want to call it. And yet he was able to say that Mount Rushmore was a place that made him proud just a few short years ago. And now the same CNN refers to Mount Rushmore as a monument to 2 slaveholders. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. But, they're talking about wanting to blow it off the side of the mountain, like dynamite the thing off the side of the mountain. Why would you destroy something so beautiful? I mean, think about the economic impact. I mean, what is there to do in South Dakota? Why does anybody ever go to South Dakota other than they're involved in fracking? In all seriousness, I'm not joking. What's the reason to go to South Dakota? You want to go see the Black Hills? I don't know. I never hear about that. The only thing I ever hear anybody want to go to South Dakota for is to see Mount Rushmore.
Of course.
So what's the economic impact? What about the people who have businesses that serve the tourists that come to visit there? Do we care about them? No, because we don't care about anything involving commerce or people's livelihoods. All we care about is this revolutionary struggle right now. And I'm okay. Let me be fair, because that's not all we care about. But these people that are rioting, and that's what it is. I am sick of these rioters being called protesters. There have been peaceful protests, and I support the concept of peaceful protests. But when you're vandalizing something, when you're committing acts of violence against innocent bystanders or people who happen to be passing through, say, in a car, when you're tearing down a statue or statues, when you're setting fire to buildings, those aren't peaceful protests. Those aren't even protests. Those are riots. That is just outright political violence for a political end.
I think one thing people need to step back and look at the reason that we have statues and monuments. And is it to honor people for what they've done? Yes, for their accomplishments. But human beings are inherently imperfect. And so every statue of every person that exists, or every person you would want to have a statue of, has done things in their life that are not perfect. And so I think that's one of the big picture things you need to look at when you're talking about these historical figures and statues is it's a moment in time, and no one's saying the bad things that they did are what they're being exalted for.
I thought it was just a reminder. Every time I look at one, a reminder of history.
Yes, that's the bigger picture.
Well, and, he who controls the present controls the past, right? This is like 1984. He who controls the present controls the past, and he who controls the past controls the future. That was one of the mantras in the book 1984. I may not have stated that exactly perfectly because I'm just going off of my memory, but that was one of the mantras in the book 1984. And it talked about how every date had been changed, every statute had been torn down, every name, every event had been subtly altered in some way to the point where people lost complete touch with any kind of set reality. And all they could count as reality was whatever the state told them that moment was reality. So literally, if you've read the book 1984, it's such a perfect prediction of what we're finding ourselves in today, because people have had their attention spans so shortened, they've now been threatened with any kind of deviation from whatever the accepted story is currently. And we'll tell you some stories about that, hopefully in today's show, if we get around to talking any details here. But, they've been threatened not to think outside of whatever the accepted politically correct narrative is. And it was just like that in the book 1984. In fact, one of the ongoing pieces of the plot in the book 1984 is how they would have these moments where everybody would get together and sort of stand in a collective rage. And they would be shouting and they would be angry at their enemies. And there was two enemies that they had. And what they would do is they would switch them. So sometimes they would be at war with this conglomeration of countries known as Oceania, and sometimes with a conglomeration known as Eurasia. But they would always say, we're at war with Eurasia. We have always been at war with Eurasia. And then like the next day, the little speaker boxes, which, it's amazing how close, George Orwell got to what we're actually facing with our smart TVs and other things. It's these TVs, essentially. They didn't, have them in the form that we're familiar with today, but these flat panel screens in your house that had cameras and microphones so that they could watch you and they could tell whether you were being a good little servant, a compliant little citizen, whether you were properly responding to the inputs coming from your little talking screen. And so, the inputs would tell you, okay, we're going to have the moment of rage, the 5 minutes of rage or whatever. And, we have always been at war with Oceania. And then the next day it would be like, we're at war with Eurasia, and we've always been at war with Eurasia. And all the people would be like, we hate Eurasia, you're going to kill Eurasia. And the primary character, the main character in the story, he could remember this. Like, yesterday it was Oceania, now it's Eurasia. But people, they were trained not to think like that. Just to blindly accept whatever the screen was telling them, because you start thinking like that. You start remembering what happened, just 3-4 months ago where they said, don't wear masks. Masks don't help you at all. Masks are proven not to protect you from this virus. Look, simple science will tell you that the masks don't have, small enough openings, particularly the ones that you're making out of your old T-shirt, right? That's what they're telling you. Make one out of your old T-shirt. Oh, okay. Why don't you just make one out of pantyhose? It's a face covering, because the point is none of these stop the virus particles, which are smaller than the little holes in the mask. None of them, not even the N95s. They do not block particles small enough to stop the virus.
But it allows you to get into Publix.
But it lets you into Publix, right? And be careful. Don't question these kind of things, because now all of a sudden, now we're not at war with Oceania. Now the mask is not bad. Now the mask is mandatory. The mask is good. It's the only thing that's going to save you. And if you don't wear the mask, you're like killing people, right? This is, and people buy into this stuff. I ran into a lady in the hallway, luckily not in this building, but I didn't have my mask on. And she gave me a look, like this look of abject terror entered her eyes as we came face to face. And she had her little hand-sewn mask on, with little colorful fabric, and she looked at me, an unmasked person. You might kill me, or you're killing other people. You don't care. No, I just remember 3-4 months ago when they said don't wear the masks. So what's changed? You keep adjusting my ear volume. Now you turned it down to nothing. Folks, we got a little in-studio shenanigans going on here, Roxanne. I'm plugged into the monitor that she's normally plugged into, and she keeps adjusting my volume. So she just turned it up really loud. Then she turned it down to nothing. Like I'm about, anyway.
Lots of hijinks in here today, Morgan.
Well, we've got so much more to cover on this. I mean, there's so many little stories that I want to get to that make some of these points. So we're going to try to get through some of these in the rest of the show. We got a lot of interesting things to cover with you. Some audio clips from President Trump's speech and even some other audio clips to share when we come back.
We're back on the Morgan Streetman Show. That was a really good rant, Morgan, and especially weaving in the components of 1984.
Yeah,
good stuff.
I mean, if you haven't read that book, folks, I mean, really, you ought to go out there and get it on Kindle or something, and you're just going to identify with it so much. You're going to see exactly what's going on in our society today. So, I mean, how did George Orwell so closely predict what we have today? I mean, and the scary thing is, I mean, it's a couple of, it's maybe 6 to 12 months beyond where we are. I mean, who knows how fast things are changing, or I should say with how fast things are changing. Who knows exactly where we're going to be in a year. I remember talking last year about the concept that by next year, July 4th is going to be racist. And sure enough, it's racist. I mean, the identity politics is so overwhelming, and I hope some people at least can see through it. I mean, they're talking about, the NFL's talking about during week 1 that we're going to play before the games the black national anthem. I mean, there is no such thing as the black national anthem. There's a song that they're going to play. It's a great song. It has really good meaning to it. The lyrics are fantastic. It's a beautiful song. But there's no different national anthem for each little subgroup in a country. So what are they saying? Because what they're wanting to say eventually is the actual national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner, the one that's been the national anthem for the whole time any of us have ever been alive, that is the white nationalist national anthem. Watch. That's what's going to happen, that national anthem, which is for everybody, black, white, all races, all orientations, all genders, whatever. It's for everybody in the country. That is our, together, collective national anthem. And that's the point of a national anthem, is to have a unifying symbol that brings everybody together, something that we can all get behind. But they're trying so hard to divide us. And you just see, look at some of the stuff that's happened over the weekend. One of the things I want to get to is President Trump's speech, but now I'm going to kind of switch gears and go a little bit of a different direction because I started talking about that. Look at some of the stuff that has happened over the weekend. I mean, something that just happened in Atlanta, Georgia. So sad. It's unbelievably sad. That Wendy's, where Rayshard Brooks was drunk and passed out in the drive-through lane and then was being in the process of being arrested, but then started violently resisting arrest and assaulting the cops, took one of their tasers, turned around and was trying to fire the taser at them, and then was shot and killed. That restaurant, which was then burned to the ground by the way, his girlfriend is the one who was throwing one of the Molotov cocktails. I don't know if you caught that little wrinkle in it. His girlfriend is one of the people who threw one of the Molotov cocktails into that Wendy's, burned that Wendy's to the ground. Well, that Wendy's is now a mecca for protesters, and they're actually trying to turn that into one of these so-called autonomous zones like they had out in Seattle. They're trying to say no police allowed around here, no people allowed around. It's nothing but a lawless anarchy where people are getting murdered and raped and other things, just like what happened in Seattle. That's what happened in that Chop or Chaz or whatever the hip name that I'm sure some Madison Avenue marketing firm was paid to come up with, because these people are well-financed. This revolution, this is not a revolution. This is not spontaneous, or not a revolution of the people. This is a well-financed plan being conducted by people who don't give a rat's tail about the people involved in these protests. They're just using them as a means to an end. That's all they're doing. And it's people like George Soros And the people that he's involved with, and there's a lot of other people involved in it, I'm sure, because it's not a single person who's running this. This is a group effort, but this is a planned revolution that they're trying to spark. And it may even be that they're trying to spark violence between the races, violence between the classes, because that's what all their messaging is about, is dividing people. And remember that divide and conquer. That's what the people that are really behind this revolution are doing. So even the people involved in the revolution are being used. They're not going to get the utopia that they think they're working for, or whatever their twisted little minds tell them that they're working for, whatever BS they're believing. They're not going to get that. They're going to get put up against the wall just like the rest of us and shot if you resist the ultimate power structure that they're trying to bring about. But back to Atlanta, this is what I'm talking about. This is unbelievable what happened over the weekend, but there was a lady with her daughter, and she was driving her car near this Wendy's. I don't know if you heard this story. Very sad story. Very sad story. She was driving her car near this Wendy's, and apparently something that she did in her car didn't comply with what the BLM protesters, the rioters, were telling her to do. I don't know if she turned into the parking lot and they got mad about that, or it was something like that. We don't know all the exact details, but they decided to just open fire. A couple of them opened fire into this car. Well, they shot an 8-year-old. First of all, the car is being operated by a black lady, and she's got her black daughter in the car. They shot and killed her 8-year-old daughter. Her daughter's name was Sakura Turner. And it's such a sad story because her father has a very similar name as well, Sakura Williamson, who's the father of Sakura Turner, although the spelling is somewhat different. He's out speaking about this, and I just wanted to very quickly play a short clip of what he had to say, and hopefully, because he's speaking very softly, he's obviously distraught, as any father would be about this situation. But here's what he had to say.
They say Black Lives Matter. You killed your own. Killed your own this time. Just because of barrier. They killed my baby because she crossed the barrier and made a U-turn. You killed a child. She ain't do nothing to nobody.
They didn't give us time to make a U-turn. They started shooting on my car before we could even make a U-turn. Shooting my tires out. Like, why?
But Black Lives Matter.
My baby was shot in her bed.
Killing.
He could barely even speak. It's so sad, But what he's saying is, hey, Black Lives Matter. You just killed this young black girl. For what? Because her mom turned in where they say she wasn't supposed to turn or something? Are you kidding me? I mean, this kind of stuff just... Now, why isn't the mayor of Atlanta, who says, what a tragedy, but doesn't do squat about it? Why isn't she sending in the SWAT team to break up this revolution that's going on in her own city? Why are they not going in there with force and dispersing these violent criminals, these thugs that are shooting and killing innocent people? Why? There is no answer, because the answer is half of our leaders, half of our political leaders are involved in this. Their own political futures, just like the district attorney or state's attorney out there in St. Louis, Missouri, whose campaign was funded by George Soros, who only got into office because of George Soros, just like our state attorney in Hillsborough here, Andrew Warren, whose campaign was funded by George Soros. I don't know if you know that. His campaign, the reason he beat Mark Ober, who was a very popular state attorney, who was a decent guy, was not hard on criminals, actually. This county was targeted by George Soros because we're still enacting the death penalty where appropriate. George Soros doesn't want the death penalty anywhere in this country. That's one of his things that he and his organizations. And by the way, just so it's clear, I don't think George Soros is driving the bus here. I think he is essentially a front man for other interests. I think he is what they would call in an intelligence operation a cutout. It's not the actual person running things. It's the person that's put forward as the front man to draw fire. Yeah, he's very wealthy. Yeah, he's a part of it. I know he probably agrees with it. But do I think he's the one ultimately calling all the shots? No, I think there are people in this world that have more money and more power even than George Soros. and he's working for those people. But leaving that aside, he's involved himself throughout the country in a number of state's attorney and district attorney races, including the one here in Hillsborough, which he changed the course of that race, and including the one in St. Louis, where you see that district attorney or state's attorney is about to charge those people for trying to defend their home. They didn't do anything. They didn't shoot anybody. They didn't trespass on anybody's land. They didn't assault anybody. They didn't threaten anybody. They just said, hey, this is private property. Get out. And they had their guns ready because, as the guy said, the McCloskeys, as the husband said, he was concerned that the next thing was going to happen was that crowd was going to rush his house, kill him and his wife, and burn the place down. And how would you feel? I mean, let me ask you this. Put aside the fact that, yeah, it looks like they live in a very nice house. By the way, the reason that they live in a very nice house and can afford to do so is because the neighborhood around that is not so nice. And St. Louis, not so nice. People don't want to live there. A lot of people have left St. Louis. Such a dangerous, crime-ridden, poorly run town. All these towns, by the way, are run by Democrats. You notice that? You noticing a pattern? The Democrats want this. Their political futures are tied up. Their financing for their campaigns are tied up with this revolutionary movement to destabilize and try to destroy America. We had so many more stories. I mean, you know, you heard the one in Seattle where the people were killed trying to block the interstate. What are you doing blocking the interstate? There's a place for a peaceful protest. The interstate is not that place. We're going to cover some more when we come back on the Morgan Streetman Show.
I have to confess to both of you, I did not. Sorry.
And now I can't hear again. It's like I go from my ears are bleeding to I can't hear anything.
I'll get this right by the end of the show. Poor Morgan.
I'll never plug into your port again, Roxanne. I learned my lesson.
That'll teach you.
You'll teach me one way or the other.
I did not look at a bit of news from Friday until this morning.
I didn't do it since 1 o'clock on Thursday.
None. We made a pact in our family to. You beat me then, Pat. We made a pact in our family not to. So I'm getting all caught up on everything I needed to know that happened this weekend from Morgan. So thank you.
Well, and there are so many other things.
Good too.
There are so many things that we can cover. You know, I mean, I love this whole situation where people in the cancel culture, they can't take their own heat. Like if somebody comes to cancel them in some way, they have a meltdown. Well, I mean, what does the Bible tell us, right? The Bible tells us, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? It's called the Golden Rule because it's considered to be the highest statement of ethics ever. Mm-hmm. So, but people are not applying the Golden Rule. Would you want, if you made a wrong turn into a rioting crowd, would you want to be shot at? No, nobody would want that. Then why are people in that crowd shooting at them?
You know what I was thinking about the cancel culture recently is, first of all, what is America known for? We love a good comeback story, right? Do we love to forgive people and let them make a comeback?
Yeah.
Now this cancel culture is the opposite of that. It's not a comeback story, but a go back in time story. Find something someone did wrong and then make them pay for it in the future. In other words, we talk about the erosion of some of our values. There's a perfect example of one that we don't even, you wouldn't think of top of mind, but it's true. We love a comeback story.
There's no reconciliation possible. Where does that lead? It only leads to violence. That's the only place this ultimately leads. And you can hear that in the language of these rioters and these people in this resistance revolution. One example is a young lady, Harvard graduate. I mean, I have to say, you got to wonder about Harvard. They've been turning out, I thought Harvard was a storied academic institution. And I thought if you went to Harvard, 1, you must be smart, 2, you must get a good education, right? Apparently not, as far as I'm concerned, seeing what's coming out of these people. But this is being encouraged. The social media, the search engines, everybody is fanning these flames, and there's an end in mind. That's what I'm saying. Don't think that groups like Amazon or Google or any of these groups really want a people's revolution in this country, because what would communism would result in them being nationalized, right? Mm-hmm. No longer would people like Jeff Bezos or the leaders of Google, they'd be put up against the wall and shot, right? Just like whatever that, I can't remember her name, but that climate change young Greta Thunberg, remember? She says, we're going to put them up against the wall. And she says, oh, I didn't mean put them up against the wall and shoot them. Well, yeah, you did. That's exactly what you meant. And everybody knows what you meant. So don't stop lying to us. Stop trying. I mean, they think we're stupid. And I guess a lot of people, particularly those who graduate from Harvard, are stupid, apparently. Not all of them, but some of them. Like this girl, Clara Genova, because she put out something on TikTok. By the way, if you're using TikTok, I mean, I think that's probably the height of idiocy right now. TikTok has been documented to be sending a lot of data from your phone back to servers in China. TikTok is it's an information gathering app. It's not about short little videos. That's what you think it's about. But all the permissions and all the things that the app does while you're not watching, all the things that it's copying off your clipboard, all the things that it's monitoring on your phone and sending them back to China, this is information gathering and warfare. And that's why it's banned from use by the U.S. military. That's why the country of India has banned TikTok among about 58 other Chinese-based apps. So if you're still using TikTok on your phone, I mean, hey, do you want to live under communist China? Do you want to live under social credit? Do you want to live under whatever Chairman Xi says the law is the law, including if you speak up, you're going to be sent to a re-education camp. You're going to be sent essentially to a prison camp or a death camp. That's what happens in China.
Well, forget about it. It's the most downloaded app out there.
It is. It's unbelievable. But, okay, so let's hear what this girl, because we got a couple of things we want to hit in this segment. We're not going to get there if we don't hurry up. Let's hear what Clara Genova has to say. And she put this video on TikTok, and it went viral. This is what she has to say about people who don't agree with her view of the world.
Next person who has the sheer nerve, the sheer entitled caucasity to say all lives matter, I'm gonna stab you. I'm gonna stab you. And while you're struggling and bleeding out, I'm gonna show you my paper cut and say, my cut matters too.
Wow. Okay, some strong statements there. I guess she's ready to fight the revolution. Well, guess what happens? Somebody reaches out to her future employer, Deloitte, and says, hey, you basically have hired a crazy person that's threatening to stab people. Do you want to bring that kind of person into an office building? Somebody who wants to stab people and then say, hey, my paper cut matters too. I mean, she's obviously mentally unstable. Well, guess what happens? Deloitte says, hey, thanks, but no thanks. Your job has been revoked. We're not hiring you. We now see that you're a crazy person. And now what happens? Now Clara can't barely take it. This is not fair. This is wrong.
I know this is what Trump supporters wanted, because standing up for Black Lives Matter put me in a place online to be seen by millions of people. The job that I had worked really hard to get.
Oh, so sad.
And meant a lot to me.
Oh, it meant so
Just
much.
called me and fired me because of everything. I don't know if everyone's seen, but it's been circulating a lot. My Black Lives Matter TikToks were picked up by conservatives and spread and shared, and people were demanding that I be fired, which I just got.
Oh.
My job that I worked really hard for.
I worked so hard for it. I'm so sorry for you, you poor little thing. It's all Trump supporters' fault, right? It's not your fault for running your mouth off on TikTok for threatening to stab people, talking about watching them die. It's not your fault. It's the fault of anybody paying attention to what you actually said. That's whose fault it is. That's the people that are wrong. We had another clip for her, but it's just going to be piling on, so I'm not going to play it. But yeah, she posted several short crying clips about how it's not fair. This is just not fair. The things that I put out there are coming back, and people are finding out about them. I just put them out there on the internet. People are finding out about it. They don't want to hire somebody who wants to stab people in the throat in the office. Why? This is not right. These people, I mean, they can't take it. They want to be these revolutionaries, but then if they get canceled, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world. I worked so hard for that job. Well, guess what? A single tear is currently rolling down my cheek for you, young lady. And obviously you haven't learned your lesson. So I'm sure you're going to have a very interesting life ahead of you. Well, let's switch gears just a little bit because there's so many other stories that I wanted to get to. We had some stuff about General Flynn and a few other things, but I don't know if we have time, Pat George. That clip's about 4 minutes. Can we start that? The best of President Trump's speech at Mount Rushmore? Let's run that.
We will state the truth in full without apology. We declare that the United States of America is the most just and exceptional nation ever to exist on earth. We are proud of the fact that our country was founded on Judeo-Christian principles, and we understand that these values have dramatically advanced the cause of peace and justice throughout the world. We know that the American family is the bedrock of American life. We recognize the solemn right and moral duty of every nation to secure its borders. And we are building the wall. We remember that governments exist to protect the safety and happiness of their own people. A nation must care for its own citizens first. We must take care of America first. It's time. We believe in equal opportunity, equal justice, and equal treatment for citizens of every race, background, religion, and creed. Every child of every color, born and unborn, is made in the holy image of God. We want free and open debate, not speech codes and cancel culture. We embrace tolerance, not prejudice. We support the courageous men and women of law enforcement. We will never abolish our police or our great Second Amendment, which gives us the right to keep and bear arms. We believe that our children should be taught to love their country, honor their history, and respect our great American flag. We stand tall, we stand proud, and we only kneel to Almighty God.
Wow. What a powerful, powerful speech. Are we still on the air, Pat
These are
George?
the values that will guide us as we strive to build an even better and greater future. Those who seek
I can't
to
tell where
erase
we
our
are.
heritage want Americans to forget our pride and our great dignity, so that we can
Okay,
no
well,
longer
I guess what I was
understand
wondering is, I thought you cut it down. I thought we were going to a break. No, because it was supposed to go, I said to 5:50. Okay, well, never mind. Just stop it now. Now it's all getting... Okay, I thought we were rolling right into the break at 5. Okay, so I got a little confused. There's the music.
We were close.
Okay, well, who knows what's going on? Who knows what's going on? Shenanigans in the studio today. I'm telling you, shenanigans in the studio. We need a second hour. I want a second hour of time because of these shenanigans. This is cut. You're cutting into my mojo here. Anyway, we had a lot. I wanted to read to you some of the statues that were going to be in, President Trump announced he's going to make this National Garden of Statues by executive order, and I wanted to read to you some of the names of them. It's people like Christopher Columbus, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Francis Scott Key. Many, many other people are listed in that, and it's going to be a beautiful garden. Martin Luther King Jr., many other amazing American heroes.
It's only taken me 3 segments, but I've got it now, Morgan. Look, I've got my hand on the correct
You're adjusting the
control
correct
button.
volume. I love it. I love it. Now, if I just knew what time it was, we'd be all set. All right, so here's some of the statues, because I wanted to kind of run through this. I don't know if you've seen this list, some of the statues that are going to be in this National Garden of American Heroes. John Adams, Susan B. Anthony, Clara Barton, Daniel Boone, Henry Clay, Davy Crockett, Frederick Douglass, Amelia Earhart, Benjamin Franklin, Billy Graham, Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson, Martin Luther King Jr., Abraham Lincoln, Douglas MacArthur, Dolly and James Madison, Christy McAuliffe, Audie Murphy, remember that name? Most decorated combat soldier in World War II. George S. Patton Jr., Ronald Reagan, Jackie Robinson, Betsy Ross, Antonin Scalia, Harriet Beecher Stowe, Harriet Tubman, Booker T. Washington, George Washington, and Orville and Wilbur Wright, and probably many more.
Where's this going to be?
I don't know that it's been decided exactly where it's going to be. I believe it's going to be in Washington, D.C. That would make sense, wouldn't it? But now imagine the security that they're going to have at that place.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we got to stop this destruction of statues. We saw rioters tearing down the statue of Christopher Columbus in Baltimore over the weekend, and we've seen so many others, as we've talked about. And what a shame that is, both for those people and for our country, that we're allowing this to happen. You know, I had one more story, but I don't think we really have time to do it justice. But, there's a University of Massachusetts dean of their School of Nursing, the Solomon School of Nursing, but it's pretty inaptly named because it doesn't sound like they're very wise. But anyway, they fired her for sending an email to the faculty, I guess it was, or the community they call it. And she says, I despair for our future as a nation if we do not stand up against violence against anyone. Black lives matter, but also everyone's life matters. No one should have to live in fear that they will be targeted for how they look or what they believe. Now, isn't that what we believe in America, or not? I mean, I think that's a pretty straightforward statement, and to me, I don't see a single thing to disagree with there. She was fired for that. She was fired for having the temerity to say everyone's life matters. It's unbelievable. Poor lady had only been in her job 10 months. I mean, it was basically the pinnacle of her career. And she was fired unceremoniously. They didn't even give her any due process. They didn't have any sort of investigation or trial. They just called her into the office. You sent that email, you're fired. Gone. And that's what we're doing to people in this country. And what did she say that was offensive? I'm sorry. What did she say that was offensive? It's unbelievable. But that's what's happening in this country. A couple of other stories I just want to mention so you know that we haven't missed them, all right? Because we really don't have time to talk about them because we do want to get to our Out There segment, which if you haven't guessed already what that is, Pat George, it's coming up.
You're going to be happy.
You're going to be happy. But a couple of quick stories. One, there's some stories that just came out over the weekend about the lab in Wuhan and how that lab received a version of the coronavirus very similar to what's been circulating right now. Very similar. They received that sample in 2013, that Wuhan Institute of Virology. So again, just wondering, is that where this virus came from? And a related story, guess what city right now is being completely flooded by water from the Three Gorges Dam? They've been releasing water over there in China. This is a dam that's getting ready to fail. I mean, they say it could fail any day now. The dam could fail. If the dam fails, these towns are going to be wiped off the map completely. You remember that tsunami back from, I think, 2004, 2005 over in Indonesia? Now you're talking about water speeds and damage at magnitudes 10 times that. You're going to see these towns will just get wiped off the map if this dam fails. And because it's so in such bad condition, they've been releasing floodwater from it. And so these towns have flooded. So if you look into it, now you won't find this reported anywhere that you will generally look. You'll have to go and dig for it. But, of course, Taiwan News has some good information on that, as well as the Epoch Times also has some information on the discharges from the dam and the flooding of the towns in the Hubei province, including Wuhan. Now, isn't that interesting? These towns are now being flooded, could be destroyed. I wonder what's happening to the Institute of Virology. I wonder if it's being flooded. I wonder if it's going to have to be torn down. You know what happens when these things flood? I mean, you can't always just fix the buildings, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes you got to just demolish them. So we'll see what happens there. But now let's turn to the story that you've probably been wondering the entire show. Did you guys miss this? Did you see this? Did you see last week that Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested in New Hampshire?
They found her.
They found her. Apparently, they always knew where she was. That's what they're claiming. Now, of course, nobody's seen her. There's been no mugshot put up. There's been no video of the arrest. And I'm wondering, why wasn't CNN there to film this? I mean, they were there when Roger Stone's house was raided. They knew about that. Why didn't anybody tell CNN that they were going to get Ghislaine Maxwell out in the woods in New Hampshire in a home that was just bought in December under a shell company that's way out in the middle of nowhere? The home is called Tucked Away because that's how remote it is. It's on about 150 acres in New Hampshire. It's a little over $1 million. By the way, $1 million goes pretty far in this area of New Hampshire because it's a beautiful home. You could go out there and find the real estate listing for it, where she purchased it back in December for about $1.1 million. But they say, she's been here the whole time. And I don't know, it's just suspicious. They told us she was in Paris just a couple of weeks ago staying in an apartment and that Paris would be where she would stay because, she couldn't be extradited from France, being a, French citizen by birth. She would be able to remain there and not be extradited to the U.S., but then somehow she winds up in New Hampshire, just kind of like she was supposedly in L.A. last summer. Remember when she had those staged photographs that we told you there was some photoshopping that was obviously going on in the photos because which was really strange because it was just like the photoshopping of the billboard ads behind her. I mean, it doesn't even make any sense. Why would you Photoshop that? But there's some strange stuff going on. Well, anyway, they've now picked her up. And guess what? I mean, just would you believe it? They're going to ship her ultimately to the same correctional facility where Epstein killed himself.
Convenient.
Oh, it's perfect, right? The one where the cameras don't work and the guards are always sleeping. They know when they're supposed to sleep through their 8-hour shift. They know what's good for them. I mean, this is unbelievable. Now, do you think this has anything to do with that U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York being canned, like a week ago? Basically a week and a couple of days ago, Jeffrey Berman. Remember, he got fired and removed, and there was all that brouhaha because he didn't go peacefully into the night. He said, I'm not resigning. And Bill Barr said, okay, then you're fired. I mean, why wasn't the guy fired earlier, frankly? They're the ones in charge of what happened, the Epstein debacle. But now supposedly they've got Ghislaine Maxwell there, and they're going to put her in the same place where Epstein was suicided. I mean, where he committed suicide. Now, what do you think could happen? We'll find out soon enough, it looks like. I'm Morgan Streetman, and that's the way I see it. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.